I knew I wasn't on the list before I even reached the gate. There was a certain way the guard looked at me, polite but cautious, like he was bracing to deliver bad news. He double-checked the clipboard, then typed my name into his tablet, and still, nothing. My name is Madison Blake. Today, I'm a brigadier general in the United States Air Force. But that day, I was just a woman in plain slacks and a dark blouse, standing off to the side, watching other families walk past. He asked me to wait. A long line of guests kept moving past me. Most wore navy dress blues or elegant civilian outfits. I wasn't here to make a statement. I just wanted to see my sister's big moment. Natalie Blake, Colonel Select, the pride of our family, the one they never stopped talking about. The ceremony was being held inside Hangar 17, a glass-paneled structure that gleamed under the California Sunday. A banner with "Congratulations, Colonel Natalie Blake" stretched across the archway like a billboard. I could hear music playing faintly through the concrete. Trumpets. It always had to be grand for Natalie. The guard came back, looking genuinely apologetic. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Your name just isn't on the civilian list, and you're not on the active-duty VIP list." I felt the heat rising in my face, but I kept my voice steady. I'd been trained for worse confrontations. "Could you check under M. Blake? Or maybe Maddie?" Still nothing. Then I saw her, my mother, walking toward the entrance, pearls gleaming, arm hooked in Dad's. He was a retired Navy captain, and he wore his suit like it was still a uniform. She looked healthy, elegant, like someone who'd aged into her identity without apology. She paused briefly when she noticed the delay at the gate, her eyes finding mine. No surprise, no warmth, just a flicker of recognition, annoyance. She leaned over, whispered something to my father. He glanced at me, his face unreadable, and then he shook his head slightly, guiding my mother toward the entrance. They didn't stop. They didn't wave. They turned away. That moment stung more than the rejection at the gate. I wasn't even worth a question. Not a, "Why is she out here?" Not a, "Let me fix this." Just silence. I watched her disappear into the building, as if I hadn't existed for the last 10 years. I told the guard it was fine. I gave him a tight smile and stepped back. There was a small patch of shade by the fence. My hands were in my pockets. My back was straight. I wasn't going to beg for entry. But here's the thing about family. They remember what they want to, and they forget what they don't have the courage to face. I wasn't there for recognition. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I just needed to see it with my own eyes, to see what their version of success looked like. To understand how far they'd gone without me, and maybe, just maybe, to remind myself how far I'd come without them. Growing up, it was always clear who the star of the family was. Natalie had this way of walking into a room and owning it. She was blonde, bright, and endlessly agreeable. Our family was Navy. Dad was Navy. His father was Navy. Natalie, it seemed, was destined for it. She was the ocean, dazzling, powerful, impossible to ignore. I was different. I was the sky, quiet, distant, easy to overlook. While she practiced cheers, I dismantled broken radios. While she hosted study groups, I hid in the garage, building miniature model aircraft. My heroes wore flight suits, not prom dresses. At school, teachers called me reserved. At home, my mother called me difficult. Dad would ruffle my hair and call me the little general. But it always sounded like a joke, not a prediction. I remember one day in high school, I came home from a 3-day national robotics competition. Our team had taken first place. I had designed the winning bot. I was carrying a 4-foot-tall trophy, my arms aching, my heart pounding. I walked into the kitchen, and the whole family was there, aunts, uncles, everyone. The house was full of balloons. I thought, for a second, they were for me. "Maddie, perfect timing," my mother said, not even looking at my trophy. "Grab a plate. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I asked, setting the heavy trophy down on the floor. My dad pointed with a beer bottle toward the living room. "What do you think? Your sister just got her pilot's license. Flew her first solo. Natalie was surrounded, regaling them with a story about her landing. Everyone was laughing, hanging on her every word. My dad looked at her with a kind of pride. I had never seen him aim at me. "Look, Dad, I won," I said, pointing to the trophy. He glanced down. "Oh, that robotics thing? That's nice, Maddie. Good job with your toys." He turned back to Natalie. "So, tell us again about the crosswind." I stood there for a full minute, invisible. I picked up my trophy, carried it to my room, and shut the door. I didn't hate her for it. I just felt like I came from a different blueprint. They were all salt water. I was thin air. I enlisted 3 days after graduation. No, I didn't enlist. I applied to the Air Force Academy. My mother thought I was applying to civilian colleges. She kept leaving Navy ROTC brochures on my bed. The last real conversation we had was over toast. She asked if I'd scheduled my interview for Annapolis. I said, "I'm not going to Annapolis. I'm going to the Air Force Academy." She barely looked up. "Don't be dramatic, Madison. We're a Navy family." "I'm serious, Mom. I want to work in space and cyber. The Air Force is the future." This time, my father spoke. He put down his coffee mug with a heavy thud. "Space? Cyber? That's a desk job, Madison. That's for people who support the fight. Blakes don't sit at desks. Blakes fight. Like your sister." The day I left, I took a cab to the airport at dawn. My mother cried. My father just stood by the door, arms crossed. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You're choosing to be irrelevant." The military didn't care if I was the quiet one. They cared if I could think. That clarity felt like oxygen. For the first time, I wasn't defined by comparison. I was just me, and that was enough. My job wasn't boots on the ground. My job was to make sure the boots on the ground came home. I was an intelligence officer in what would become the Space Force. My domain was the invisible battlefield. Satellite comms, cyber threats, and enemy signal jamming. My family didn't get it. "So, you're in IT?" my mother would ask on the rare phone call. "Something like that, Mom." I didn't tell them about the late nights in a windowless command center. My eyes burning, fueled by stale coffee, tracking a signal from a rogue satellite. I didn't tell them about the time I had to make a split-second call to shut down a comms grid, knowing a team would be deaf for 3 minutes, just to prevent a cyber attack that would have exposed their location. And I never, ever told them about Syria. It was 2017. I was a major, running the intel desk for a joint branch operation. We were providing overwatch for a flight of Navy F-18. Seconds Natalie's squadron on a high-risk bombing run. It was supposed to be a milk run. Intel showed clear skies. "Maddie," my operator said, his voice tense. "I'm seeing ghost signals. Heavy jamming from the east. They're masking something." I looked at the feed. He was right. The enemy radar looked too quiet. It was a trap. They were luring Natalie's squadron into a kill box, planning to light them up with surface-to-air missiles the second they got in range. "Get me a line to the squadron lead, now," I yelled. "Ma'am, they're on comm silence until the target is acquired." "I don't care. Break protocol. Get them on the horn." I finally got the channel. "Viper lead, this is Sky Eye. Abort. Abort. You are flying into a trap. SAM sites are active at your 11 o'clock. 20 miles. A voice I knew better than my own came back, strained. "Sky Eye, we have no thermal on any SAMs. We are proceeding." "Natalie, listen to me," I screamed, forgetting protocol. "The thermals are decoys. They're masking the real threat. Pull up, damn it, pull up." The line was silent for a terrifying second. I watched the green dots on my screen fly toward the red circle. Then I heard her voice. "All Viper units. This is Viper lead. Hard right, break altitude, evasive maneuvers. Now." 2 seconds later, the sky where they would have been erupted in a volley of missiles. We got them out. No casualties. We lifted off into the black sky, the medics taking over while I sat near the rear, helmet still on, mouth dry. She never looked back. She didn't have to. She was safe, and that was enough. Back at base, I filed the report under my rank. She never knew it was me. The voice was just Sky Eye, and I let it stay that way. I didn't need her to know who pulled her out of that fire. I just needed her to make it home. Promotions came. I didn't chase medals. I just did the job. When I finally earned my first star, it arrived in a plain manila envelope. No fanfare. I didn't tell my family. I just knew it wouldn't mean to them what it meant to me. They'd ask how I managed it, assume it was a diversity initiative. They'd smile and change the subject back to Natalie, who was making Colonel. She was getting the ceremony, the parade, the banner. I wouldn't have even come if General Harris hadn't called. He had been the commander during that Syria op. He knew who Sky Eye was. "You should come, Maddie," he said, not just as her sister, as a peer. I paused. Then I said yes. I didn't ask for special seating. I didn't ask to be announced. I just told him I'd be there. He understood. That morning, as I buttoned my Air Force service dress jacket and adjusted the single star on my shoulder, I looked in the mirror, calm, steady, ready. For once, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. I had already done that. The star on my shoulder was proof enough, which brought me here. Standing by a fence, locked out of my sister's promotion ceremony, I saw General Harris step out of the hangar. He saw me, and his face hardened. He strode over, bypassing the guard. "General," I said, standing straight. "Maddie, what the hell are you doing out here?" "My name's not on the list, sir." He looked at the guard. "This is Brigadier General Madison Blake. She's not a guest. She's my command." The guard went pale. "Sir, I didn't know." "You do now." Harris looked at me. "You were just going to stand out here?" "It's Natalie's day, sir. I didn't want to." "Nonsense," he grunted. "You're not just a peer, General. You're the one who saved her. Let's go." He didn't wait for a reply. He strode back into the hangar, and I followed him. The hall was packed. Rows of polished boots, sharp uniforms, and respectful silence. A Navy flag hung behind the stage. Natalie was at the podium, confident and composed. Her dress blues were immaculate. She smiled as she spoke about duty, about family, about sacrifice. She thanked our parents, who were beaming in the front row. My name never came up. She was born for this kind of room. I had spent years in silence. She had spent years in the spotlight. She finished her speech. To those who've stood by me from day one, the applause was loud and clean. Then General Harris stepped to the mic. "Thank you, Colonel Blake. A well-deserved promotion." The crowd started to shuffle, but he held up a hand. "Before we conclude," he said, his voice cutting through the room, "there is one more officer in attendance. An officer who couldn't be on the program, as her work requires her to remain in the shadows. But she is here today, as family." He turned and looked straight at the back wall, where I stood. "And it's high time her family recognized who she is." Heads turned. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Please rise and show your respect for the officer who, as Sky Eye, saved Colonel Blake's entire squadron over Syria. My colleague, Brigadier General Madison Blake." For a beat, no one moved. Then the entire room rose like a wave. I walked forward. My boots echoed against the floor. Crisp, even steps. I didn't rush. I didn't smile. Natalie stood frozen at the podium, eyes locked on me, her perfect smile gone. My mother clutched her purse. My father looked like he'd been struck. I reached the edge of the stage. I didn't look at my family. I saluted the flag, then General Harris. He saluted back. "Maddie," he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Glad you could make it." I nodded. Then I turned to my sister. She was still frozen, her world tilted. I was her older sister, the little general, the desk jockey, and I outranked her. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I just stood there. Natalie stared at me, her face pale. Then her training kicked in. Her back straightened. Her eyes locked on mine. Slowly, her hand came up in a sharp, precise, and required salute. I returned it. A short, crisp nod. He didn't linger. I walked over to General Harris, exchanged a few quiet words, and thanked him. His expression said more than he could have spoken. Behind me, the murmurs began to ripple. A man in the second row leaned to his friend and whispered, "That's her sister?" The other one replied, "She outranks the whole row." That was enough. My presence had said everything. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, boxed into silence. It all ended in that room. Not with drama, not with revenge, just with truth. When I exited, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I didn't stay for the reception. I slipped out through the side exit. I found my father waiting for me in the hallway. He was alone. He looked smaller. The imposing certainty he always wore was gone, replaced by something brittle. "Maddie," he said, his voice rough. I had no idea." "I know," I said. "It was all I could offer." "The Syria up, was that you?" "Yes, sire." He flinched at the sir. He looked down at his shoes, then back at me. "You saved her. You saved your sister." "I saved a squadron, Dad. That was the mission." He nodded, swallowing hard. They're calling you Sky Eye. Like a hero." "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm just a different kind of soldier than the one you wanted." He didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at me. Really looked at me. For what felt like the first time in my life. Not at the robotics girl, or the desk jockey, but at the general standing in front of him. "You're right," he finally whispered. "You're not irrelevant. You're essential." He didn't apologize. He didn't hug me. But he met my eyes. And for the first time, his gaze wasn't filled with disappointment. It was filled with a terrible, dawning respect. That was enough. I gave him a short, professional nod. "Goodbye, Dad." As I drove off base, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because they finally knew who I was, but because it no longer mattered if they did. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I had found something better. Self-respect. So if you've ever sat in the back of your own story, waiting to be seen, ask yourself this. What would happen if you stopped waiting? What if your silence was never a weakness, but the beginning of something powerful?